So I don't know what to say about Texas.
You said earlier you had so much to say about
I have a
this.
lot to say. I don't know where to start.
Hello and welcome back to the Fourth and Long-Winded podcast. This is episode number 7. We want to make sure to remind you to comment, like, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, and if you're listening to us audio only, make sure to leave us a review. It'll really help us out. But this is going to be our next episode in the State of the Conference series. We're going to jump back into the Power 5 conferences and talk about the Big 12 today. First, Cody, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. We've been working on some home projects. I don't know if you can see in the background, but Brooke's got her little thrifting business going, so we're working on getting all that organized today.
Nice. Well, let's get into a few news topics from the past week before we get into the Big 12.
Cool.
I do have 5 topics to touch on.
All right.
First one, I need to give a shout out to Rondale Moore, Purdue wide receiver who is in the draft this year, but he's not being hyped the way he should. He ran a 4.29 at the 40.
I saw that
40 time. I think he's supposed to be like a end of the first round kind of draft pick, but I think he deserves a lot more hype. He could be
I tend to agree with you. I mean, and he's essentially the reason that Purdue was in any games.
Well, not this past year and a half. It was David Bell, the other great wide receiver.
I guess
his freshman season will always be one of my favorite Purdue seasons. The year we beat Ohio State.
Yeah, it was a good season.
He went nuts that game. But moving on, Mackenzie Milton made his debut in for Florida State in the spring game. Made a couple throws. He looked healthy. I'm happy for him.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I am not a Florida State fan, I don't dislike Florida State. I guess I just don't like their administration. I think that they just aren't very well put together. But I'm really excited that Mackenzie Milton is back.
Definitely.
He was the reason that I still kind of stan UCF. And I mean, he's gonna be exciting. And honestly, I think that he puts Florida State just a hair higher on where they were. Still think Florida State's not going to be very good this year, but
he'll make them exciting and like at least watchable.
Yeah, which they weren't last year. Yeah. They were not fun to watch. Like there wasn't even like life that was happening on the field.
No.
And I think that with him being there, that is gonna change.
Hopefully. Next, I'm sure you saw this. The homeless guy who posed as a player at USC for like a week or something. And
I didn't see a ton into this, but I know that he like was getting team meals and I mean, man, I should go play at USC if that's.
Dude, what the hell is Clay Helton doing over there?
I don't know, man.
I think I saw that he even like put on some pads and was out there like fielding punts. It got that far. Seems like stuff keeps getting worse over at LSU. Some more stuff this past week. They're facing a second federal investigation into the handling of sexual misconduct allegations. Yeah. Plus, an athletic administrator has claimed years of harassment and retaliation after reporting Les Miles back then. So not good.
Not good at all.
It continues to get worse, but it's not really covered. And like you turn on ESPN now, they don't talk about it. Like it happened when Les Miles got fired. Like everybody, it was in the mainstream, but like when you pay attention to this is pretty fucking terrible.
Right. Like I love how ESPN covers they'll cover the stuff about Colin Kaepernick and kneeling. They'll cover that for like years. They're still covering it.
Yeah.
But then the stuff that is, really substantially and should just be very wrong, they're not willing to talk about it.
They talk about it for a day or two, and then it's on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Finally, our boy Dion lost a shootout this weekend. Lost two in a row now. They lost to Alabama A&M, and North Dakota State won again. I think they're back up to number 2 in the polls. So I'm holding tight to my prediction that they're gonna win the national championship.
I think that there's a very good chance of that happening.
James Madison's the only one that stands in the way.
Yeah.
All right, let's gonna finish up the news from the past week. So let's get into the state of the conference, Big 12.
Okay, so like with all the other conferences, I think that we'll start kind of with the bottom of the recruiting, which doesn't necessarily mean that this is the worst team in the conference. It could just be that year they had a smaller class than everyone or whatever.
Or they're bad.
But we'll start with the bottom of the recruiting, which is Texas Tech. They were ranked 71st nationally and 10th in the Big 12. Change your name. And and I think that this is kind of probably a weird year for Texas Tech, because last year they were ranked 48th nationally. And so that's kind of a massive drop.
I've noticed the whole Big 12 is down, like all of them down this year.
Yeah. So. I think that, and I think we can get into this maybe in like a conversation of comparing the conferences, but I think that that's kind of a trend that is probably going to continue.
You think?
I just don't know. I don't think the Big 12 has enough teams. And I know like the me being the person that wants like UC to join the Big 12 or whoever to join the Big 12. I genuinely don't think the Big 12 has enough teams to attract the kind of players that they need to remain relevant. Yeah, they're going to have Oklahoma and Texas at those high spots, but otherwise they're just all recruiting Texas.
Yeah,
and they're not the only ones that are recruiting Texas. Alabama is recruiting very well out of Texas. Texas A&M is recruiting very well out of Texas. So I think that unless you expand your markets to other places, you have some troubles with recruiting. It's not to say that they can't recruit nationally. It's just harder.
It's not their bread and butter. Their bread and butter is Texas, and if they're at this point 6th, 7th on the list in terms of the food chain, and when it comes to Texas, because Alabama, like you said, is in there now. Texas,
Ohio State is recruiting Texas like crazy. I don't want to say, I still think that Texas is probably going to be a big place for a lot of Texas kids to go to.
Yeah.
I just, I don't know. We can get maybe into Texas a little bit more because I have a lot to say about Texas.
Okay. That's later on, but yeah.
In relation to Texas Tech, I do think this was kind of a blip of a bad recruiting, but currently they are also the worst ranked nationally for next year, and they're not ranked at all, which means they have no signees for 2022, which is a little concerning.
Yeah. I do know that their head coach, Matt Wells, is a little bit on the hot seat right now, or actually pretty much on the hot seat right now, within the school and its fans and its alumni. It's been a rough first two years now. Yeah, he's 2 years in here after being at Utah State. But I don't know. I think we should give him a couple more years. I think he's a good coach. He did well with Utah State, but I don't know. Alan Bowman, we talked about him transferring to Michigan. He transferred from Texas Tech.
Yeah.
So that we're losing their quarterback.
So I think the thing with Texas Tech is they have everything in place that they could be doing well. Like there's not that much of a separation between them and their facilities, their stadium, with most of the other teams in the Big 12. Actually, I would even argue that their stadium is better than most teams in the Big 12. But I think you need it. If you're a head coach, you need a gimmick to win at Texas Tech. You need something about you that is going to set you apart from the other coaches. Like I think of Mike Leach at Texas Tech. He had that gimmick, the air raid offense, which at the time was super flashy, and no one was seeing it. No one knew how to defend it, and it was easy to recruit kids to that because it's new, it's shiny.
Well, I mean, it's never like I think Texas Tech is that school, like we were talking, it all connects to the recruiting. They've never been even in the top 5 for Texas, maybe even. But they need a coach that can take that talent like Mike Leach and do more than what it's capable of.
Yeah, and I think that it also goes to say, like, who wants to go to Lubbock?
Yeah.
Like Tommy Tuberville left Lubbock, Texas, which is a decent Power 5 job, to go to Cincinnati, which wasn't.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that Texas Tech should be a middle of the road Big 12 team, but right now they've kind of fallen on hard times. And you raise a good point. You need to develop that talent.
Yeah. Nothing really fancy to touch on with their schedule before we move on to their next team. They do play Houston at NRG Stadium in the non-conference.
Oh, that'll be fun.
At Texas, at Oklahoma. So that's
another coach that's kind of on the hot seat.
Yeah.
Kind of, not really, but kind of.
I think he's fairly safe, I think. Holgerson, isn't that who?
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about that in another episode, but I have some things.
All right.
Do you want to move on to TCU?
TCU, let's go.
All right. So nationally, they're ranked 61st. So that's a whole 10 spots higher than Texas Tech. And that's like a major drop, like absolutely massive drop from the previous year. They were ranked 24th.
Yeah. Well, they were consistently in the 20s all the past 5 years, and then all of a sudden 61st.
And I think part of that is because of the size of the class. I think with COVID and the signing period and all of everything that went on, I think that maybe Gary Patterson just kind of didn't adjust that well to it and lost some of his guys to the bigger programs.
I haven't actually looked at the roster, but maybe is this a thing? If they have a younger team, not a lot of seniors, not a lot of people graduating, could it just be a short year where they don't have.
And that's kind of what I'm thinking it is. I still don't think 61st is anything to shake a stick at. I mean, you can have a 75th ranked team and still be in the top 25.
Gary Patterson's a good coach too.
He's a great coach. He's probably one of my favorite coaches to watch, and that's saying a lot because he's a defensive coach, and I don't like defense.
He's been there for 21 years now.
Yeah, I know.
21 years.
He started there in 2000.
All right, I did make this note. I did make this note. Get this. 16 bowl games in 20 years at TCU, right? From 1903 to the year 2000, how many bowl games did TCU as a school make?
12.
18. Okay.
Wow.
But still.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the Big 12 is really kind of full of those stories of like one coach making a big difference to a program. Coming up, I'll talk a little bit about that with another team.
Yeah.
What?
I said Mike Leach, though, we were just talking about. That's why that's the only reason Texas Tech still like relevant in our mind over the last 20 years is Mike Leach.
Yep. Yeah, so they have 2 4-stars, 11 3-stars. It's just not a super outrageous class. It's okay. The record in 2020 was 6-4, which I think was decent enough. I think they opted out of a bowl.
I think they were, yeah.
I think they opted out, which it makes sense. But I think that they should have a better class. However, Gary Patterson is a great developer of players as well. And not only does he coach and get the recruits, he develops them really well. And I think that there's an advantage for him as the recruits kind of know that he's going to be there in 4 years. Like if you're a recruit and you want to go somewhere where the coach is going to be there in 4 years, TCU is the place for you because he's been there a long time. And unless he retires, he's not leaving. He built a big old mansion on top of a hill outside TCU that overlooks the stadium. He likes it there and he's comfortable there. They have a great practice facility and they have really enthusiastic fans that travel well. Plus, I just think the color scheme's really good.
It's unique. I like it.
It's good. I think the mascot is cool. Like you look at those shiny helmets with the horned frog on it. I mean, it's a cool combination.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel positively about TCU, probably more than I should, considering this recruiting class.
Yeah, I think it's just boils down to Gary Patterson. You trust Gary Patterson, and so you're going to be okay with wherever TCU goes. Yeah. They don't really have an exciting schedule, so pretty bland. But we can move on to Iowa State if you'd like.
Yeah. Let's go to Iowa State. What do you got on them?
Okay. 59th recruiting class ranking this year. Head coach Matt Campbell. He's Matt Campbell, not if you know Iowa State football, but if you follow the coaching carousel every offseason, because his name over the last 3 years, I want to say now, has just consistently been, oh, he's going to the NFL. Oh, he's going to this bigger college school, to Michigan. Yeah.
I mean, Michigan fans have been trying to give that job to Matt Campbell for a while now.
Yeah. He's stuck around at Iowa State, and he's turning that into a pretty reputable program. As we saw this past year, I think it's kind of their breakout year. I know the recruiting classes, but I mean, it's down, but the Big 12 is all down. Been in the 50s and the high 40s the last couple of years.
And I don't think they're down all that much, though.
No, not that big of a gap.
And especially considering where the team was at when he got there.
Yes.
I think I didn't write down exactly how many times this had happened, but in the history of Iowa State football, never before this past year has Iowa State beat Texas and Oklahoma in the same year. Never.
Yeah.
Before this year, Iowa State had only beat Texas 3 times. Matt Campbell literally holds 2 of the 4 wins against Texas.
There's a reason his name's brought up in the coaching carousel every year. This guy's
there's absolutely if you are Iowa State, every night when you go to bed, you pray that the people with more money than you don't come after your coach.
You're just praying that, or no, you're just in the mindset of like 1 year at a time. You're like, all right, this might be the last year.
Enjoy.
Just enjoy the hell out of it.
Enjoy this while you can, because not only is, and actually I think that Matt Campbell is doing something at Iowa State that will, maybe not will, but can continue to affect the program.
Yeah.
They're finally
establishing a foundation.
Yeah, establishing a foundation. They're finally investing money in the program. They put in that huge TV screen and did a bunch of stadium upgrades. They've upgraded their practice facility, and it's a really nice practice facility. And Matt Campbell still, I mean, he's not recruiting the top of the top, but he's developing these players really well. And I think last year, I mean, they had that blip of a loss to Louisiana, but Louisiana was a good team.
Yeah.
So I don't really. I think as long as Matt Campbell's there, you should be happy. And if you're ever not happy with Matt Campbell at Iowa State, and you are an Iowa State fan, you just need to shut up.
Yeah. want to touch on a few things from their schedule. They play 2 Iowa teams in the non-conference. They play Northern Iowa at home, and their rivalry with Iowa. They'll have that at home this year.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Northern Iowa is kind of one of those teams in the FCS that always does really well. They tend to always make the playoffs. I don't know what their team looks like right now per se, but they're a solid team in the FCS. And
sure.
Iowa. We've covered them in the Big Ten. They're a solid team. They're always a good team. So that'll be a very interesting matchup. And I think that I'll definitely be watching that Iowa State game.
Yeah. All right, you want to move on?
Yeah. So this is Kansas State, and so my thing with Kansas State, they are ranked nationally at 56. Last year they were ranked 52nd. Next year they'll be ranked. They're currently ranked 42nd. And despite this, I don't feel great about Kansas State.
Okay, why? I kind of feel the opposite.
So. Really interesting. So here's my thing. Kansas State likes to play the upset. They like to play this team that like beats Oklahoma and then isn't good the rest of the year.
Yeah.
And I think that works for Kansas State fans for some reason. It shouldn't, but like ever since Bill Snyder retired and then didn't retire. And Bill Snyder was kind of like the Gary Patterson, the Mike Leach of Texas Tech, kind of the glue holding it all together. And I just don't know how I feel about Chris Kleiman.
See, that's who I'm optimistic about. I think he's a program builder. I know he was the second coach in the North Dakota State dynasty, but I think he knows how to build a winning program. He knows how to make recruits that aren't as good into better players, and I think they can play a style of football that's not really anywhere else in the Big 12. If you see what North Dakota State plays, they do play a more pro style,
right?
Run heavy, defensive style of football, and I think that could play in the Big 12 where everybody else is playing these. Maybe it doesn't, and you know what? But I think I'm going to believe in it because I think Chris Kleiman's a good coach.
Yeah, I think that he's got to really coach up that defense.
Yeah.
That's really where it comes to, because the Big 12 just doesn't play defense. They just decided to stop years ago.
They should be the one team that actually plays defense and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, you make some good points. I just don't know I don't know what it is about. I'm just not super optimistic. When I think about them compared to all these other teams, I'm not optimistic.
See, I think that might be, we were talking about how you remember the glue that holds these programs together, these coaches that have been there so long. But I think Bill Snyder's kind of drilled into your head that Kansas State is just kind of mediocre and they're good for an upset every once in a while.
Absolutely. That's exactly what this is.
But it's not.
He's not there. I mean, the stadium's named after him. How do you play how do you coach in a stadium that's named after the guy that came before you? Like, I just don't
do it.
I don't know. So my next one, my notes is for Kansas, which one, how are they this far up in the rankings? But two, these are my literal notes: garbage fire.
Yeah. I think I put dumpster fire in mine somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, this team, I don't care. I really don't care how they could have the number one recruiting class in the country, and it wouldn't matter to me. I think this team is garbage.
I do want to make one point. I think there needs to be a documentary made about the 2008 Kansas football team.
Anomaly?
The 12-1 Orange Bowl victory with Mark Mangino at the helm, because every other season other than that over the last 30 years, they haven't had a winning season. They're 3 wins a season on average.
Yep.
And I just think there should be a documentary made about that season.
I mean, there should. There absolutely should. The greatest team in Kansas football history.
Yeah, and it was just they were back to 3-9 the next year. Yeah. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it doesn't. I don't feel the need to cover that. I don't even feel bad for Kansas because you have basketball, drop football, drop out of the Big 12 and just play basketball, join like the American or something. Like, stop trying.
But see, you want to stay in the Big 12 for basketball.
I
You can't move.
guess schedule them in non-conference.
Big 12 is a
like
basketball conference. We learned that this year. Big 12 is a basketball conference.
Yeah, I guess.
Especially for Kansas. I do want to touch on their current situation with head coach. They do have a new AD that they just introduced, Travis Goff. He has a big decision to make a head coach. So the line of thing, I did look into some Kansas football blogs, not gonna lie.
Oh man.
And yeah, it's a dark place.
The farthest I reached into was like the day after they fired Les Miles, and I think they were talking about hiring the guy that was responsible for the 12-1 season again. That they fired.
Mark Mangino.
Yeah. They were talking about hiring him back, but I think they fired him. Like, I don't think he wants that job.
No. So basically, the fans, the alumni, and the majority of the players have come out and they've stated their support for the current interim head coach, Emmett Jones. But he has no head coaching experience, hasn't even played or called plays. Yeah. So there's like a half want that, and then the other half are like, just go out and get your own guy and start building something here. Don't, because like you hire Emmett Jones, yeah, and you might have. I guarantee if they did that, they'd have an upset win at some point this year, because it's the story of like, that's our guy. We're gonna fight for him.
Our guy. We played really well for him, and then they go out and lose to like Bowling Green.
Yeah, and then it's the next 3-4 years are just disastrous. So I think they should go out and hire an outside guy.
I agree with you.
Somebody not connected with that current situation whatsoever.
Hire someone from like the Pac-12.
Just that'd be a step down for anybody from the Pac-12.
I don't know. Yeah, it would be. It would be a step down from most jobs.
Just
like,
go hire.
I don't think I would want to go from coaching even like Central Michigan to coaching Kansas. Like,
go hire a 1AA coach.
Or NAIA. I know the University of St. Francis in Indiana. They were undefeated for a few years. Hire their head coach.
Yeah. They do play. We talked about it when we talked about the Sun Belt last episode. They do play Coastal Carolina on the road in their non-conference.
Yeah, that was part of a three-year contract.
Yeah. So that's going to be what, Coastal Carolina minus 21.5 or something, probably.
Yeah, and it should be.
Yeah.
All right.
You want to move on to the Baylor Bears?
Yeah, I'm excited about the Baylor Bears. Actually, I'm not really that excited about them. They have the 44th ranked nationally, 5th in the conference. It's actually up from the previous year. And this is kind of the first one. It's up, and I think that makes sense with having an established head coach now. They went 2-7 in 2020, but I think that was kind of a blip. It was just it was a disappointing year because the year prior they were really good.
Yeah.
Which I get, having lost Matt Rule and
new head coach, first time head coach.
It makes sense. It makes sense. I think that
COVID.
Yeah, I think that the national championship in basketball is kind of gonna help a little bit.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I think that having that now, it says a little something about them that we're committed to athletics, because they are.
Yeah.
They've invested heavily into football. Their stadium is beautiful. It sits right on the river. They have sailgating, which is I'm envious of. They have nice practice facility. I don't really know what they're gonna do this year. I don't know if they're gonna really be that good, but I feel like in years to come they should be pretty good.
Yeah, I have faith in Dave Aranda. I think he's got a good breadth of experience. He was the LSU defensive coordinator for their national championship team in 3 years prior, and he was the Wisconsin defensive coordinator So he's got that defensive mindset, sort of like Matt Rule. Matt Rule had a defensive mindset.
Yeah.
I think he can continue to build off of Matt Rule, and Baylor will be back.
I don't have a ton else to say. How's their schedule look?
We talked about it again with the Sun Belt in our last episode. Go listen to that if you haven't listened to it. They play at Texas State in the non-conference, which is a little quirky, a little weird.
Yeah, that's a weird one.
They do play BYU, so they're one of BYU's 12 schools that they're playing. But yeah, nothing exciting in their conference. Obviously, they play everybody. Everybody in the Big 12 plays everybody. So, West Virginia.
Yeah. So West Virginia is one of those schools for me in the Big 12 that I used to really like them in the Big 12. I thought that like when it happened, I thought it made a lot of sense. And as this has gone on, I really feel that West Virginia has kind of fallen off from the floor that they were on. Like I really used to feel like West Virginia was one of those teams that was going to be consistently in that like 11 to 20 spot. That was just like my perception. It wasn't always true, but that's kind of the way that I perceive West Virginia, just because they're the biggest team.
Well, that's what they were. That's what they were when we were growing up. Like Pat White.
What they were when we were growing up. And so that was kind of like what I saw their floor to be, is remaining there. And I feel like they haven't done that. They've been like good, like even as far as reaching number 3 at one point the year before Dana Holgerson left. But I just feel like they can't. I mean, they're nationally ranked at 40th, and you're in the Big 12, which already has a recruiting problem, and like you're
playing. I think they're recruiting a different area. They're so far away.
You have to go and travel to Texas like 5 times a year, 1,000 times a year, and so the people in Texas are watching your games. That's fine, but like the people on the East Coast, which is where you're actually recruiting, Washington D.C., Pittsburgh, they're not watching your games.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is a detriment to West Virginia, because the areas that they need to be recruiting to be in those spots, they're not doing it. They're not being seen.
I think they're doing fine recruiting. I don't like they're consistent. They're right where I'd expect them to be. Put it that way.
I guess, yeah. But like I will say, I didn't mean that they're recruiting bad. But I don't think they're recruiting what they could be recruiting if they were in a different conference, or as they were recruiting when they were in the Big East.
I think today it's just so much, like people are just so much more knowledgeable, especially if you're a recruit. Like you don't think you're going to do your research and like,
I agree.
Not pay attention to the school that's like 100 miles away, even though it's not directly like easily. Like streaming nowadays, you can watch any game from any part of the country.
Yeah, and I agree. I just also think that there's something to say about getting those kids that are like 150 miles away from you, from your school, to come to your campus, because developing those relationships really help. And so, I don't know.
I'm surprised anybody wants to go to Morgantown, West Virginia, to be honest.
That's fair. It's not too far from Pittsburgh. It's actually a nice little city.
Ohio too. Like there's a lot of like they got a lot of pipeline, like powerful high school football states right next to them. Ohio, Pennsylvania.
Right.
So I think they have the potential to be even more, but I just always think of them in this 30 to 40 kind of range in the recruiting.
Right. So, I don't know. I guess
head coach is Neil Brown.
Yep.
We talked about him at Troy. He used to be at Troy. We talked about him in the Sun Belt episode. A lot of ties with the Sun Belt and the Big 12, I'm noticing.
It kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
I think most of the schools in the Big 12 are kind of they're kind of not your dream job.
In the Big 12?
Yeah, I mean there are dream jobs in the Big 12, but like Baylor, Iowa State, Kansas State, TCU, Texas Tech, none of those are like dream job for
Yeah.
a coach.
I think that's most conferences though.
I guess.
I mean, in Big Ten, just off the top of my head, Ohio State, Michigan, Wisconsin.
Penn State. I think they have more than
That's
the Big 12
4
has to
out of
offer.
14. That's more. They have more teams in the Big Ten though.
Well, yeah, that's true. That like I'll admit that. I just still think that the Big 12 just doesn't have as much to offer.
All right, fair enough.
I'm shitting on the Big 12 today.
We got a little bit off topic there. Where were we at? We're talking about West Virginia. Neil Brown. Yeah. He was I did see in a Sports Illustrated article they named him number 10 in the 10 best coaches under 45.
Interesting.
I don't know what that means. I just
I
saw
don't
it when I Googled him. But I think he did. Obviously, he did a really good job at Troy. I think give him a little bit of time, he might live up to Dana Holgerson's name.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens there.
They do touching on their schedule. We talked about it in the Big Ten East conference preview. The legendary rivalry between West Virginia and Maryland. They will be starting that up again week 1. But nothing else exciting. So moving on to Oklahoma State.
The Fighting Mullets. Oklahoma State is probably my favorite team in the Big 12, I think.
For what reason?
I don't know. So T. Boone Pickens is probably the reason that I like Oklahoma State.
Who is that?
T. Boone Pickens is the reason that Oklahoma State is even remotely relevant.
Okay.
At one point, he developed a relationship with a booster, or with not a booster. He became a booster. He was Oklahoma State grad, and he was an oil baron in Texas. And then someone convinced him to donate some money, and T. Boone Pickens asked the guy, he was like, "So how much would it take to put us on the map as being like with Oklahoma and Texas, like being nationally relevant?" And they were like, probably like $100 million. And so he just dropped $100 million on Oklahoma State athletics.
They're not at the level of Oklahoma and Texas.
They're not. And that is why he then continued. And I think it was like over the course of his lifetime, ended up spending like $1 billion total dollars in donations to Oklahoma State athletics and Oklahoma State. Like the entire campus is just like, and the science building sponsored by T. Boone Pickens. It's just like, it's absurd. There's a pretty good ESPN article about it. I'll send it to you sometime. But
okay. Sounds like a hoot.
But I read that, and I just like feel some kinship with Oklahoma State because I too want someone to give me $100 million.
Okay. So I guess, yeah, me too. Count me in for that as well.
So that is why I think I like Oklahoma State. I also like orange. It's a fun color for me.
Oh, okay.
I think that Mike Gundy did some really good job navigating adversity over this past season, considering how the offseason previous to 2020 went for him.
Yeah.
I think the team is going to lose a lot of talent from this past year. I think like this past year was their year to win the Big 12, and they didn't do it.
I mean, they got the best recruiting class they've got in at least 5 years.
I mean, yeah, but I still think that they lost a lot of their talent. It was kind of a senior heavy team.
Okay.
And I don't know. I think that they're probably going to be just as good as they have been.
I can't pick against Mike Gundy. He does it every year. He's made a bowl game in 15 of his 16 years as head coach, which is kind of remarkable. His first season as head coach is the only one he didn't make a bowl game, and it's the only losing record he's ever had as Oklahoma State head coach. So I'm going to go ahead and book him down for a bowl game and an upset win over Texas, Iowa State, maybe even Oklahoma. You never know.
Not all three.
No, not all three. Definitely not all three. One of those they will probably beat, and they might be ranked in the top 15 at some point, but
Yeah, I agree.
they're never
I
actually going to win
agree.
anything. I
All
do want
right.
to make one statement. I believe Mike Gundy will retire as the Oklahoma State head coach. I think he will
Ooh.
coach there for the rest of his career. I don't see
I don't
obviously
know. I don't know many other teams that would put up with him.
exactly. And it seems
Yeah.
like Oklahoma State's athletic department is perfectly fine with him.
Yeah.
And I mean, he gets results. They're
Yep.
like I just said, 15 out of 16 years, he's in a bowl game. He's got a
Yeah.
winning record in every single season except for his first. So
I think you could
that's
potentially.
why I think
I've kind of trolled some of the boards, like the chat boards for Oklahoma State, being an official Oklahoma State fan, and there are some rumblings
behind Michigan or in front of Michigan.
Huh?
Behind Michigan or in front of Michigan?
Oh, definitely behind.
Okay.
But there are some rumblings of him being on the hot seat. Some like disgruntled fans that want more out of him, and I'm just saying, be careful what you wish
You
for.
want more?
Yeah, they want more. They want it. Well, I mean, if you look at they are a little brother to Oklahoma. They are.
They always will be.
I don't have the exact stats, but it's like 1 million to like 3 in the record. You're always going to be, but sometimes you'll catch them.
Yeah, that's the purpose.
Actually,
like
their
Ohio
game
State
with
to
Oklahoma
Michigan,
was my most disappointing game of this past year. It was very disappointing.
Yeah,
Oklahoma just destroyed them.
Yeah. See, but that happens every year. You get because they'll beat Texas, they'll beat some other team, and you'll be like, all right, maybe this is year. Oklahoma State's rolling into Oklahoma, going to beat them. Nope, they're not going to.
You have anything on their schedule?
They do play Tulsa.
Great.
And actually really exciting. They do play at Boise State, so that's an exciting game.
That's an exciting game.
That is a great game. It's their third game of the season, so it would probably be late September.
I hope it's a late night game.
That'd be cool, like a Friday night game. That'd be a cool.
No,
game.
Saturday night. I want to be at the bar.
Saturday night.
Yeah, like an 8 p.m. start. I want to like show up at the bar in like at halftime, watch the second half of the game at the bar.
Yeah.
And then it rolls into the Pac-12 at night, and I get kicked out of the bar at 3 a.m. and the games are still happening.
Yeah, Hawaii versus Fresno State's on.
Looking forward to it.
All right. Second to last pool.
Yep. All right, Texas. So I don't know what to say about Texas.
You said earlier you had so much to say about Texas.
I have a lot to say. I don't know where to start.
Let's start with the head coach. What do you think of Steve Sarkisian?
I think Steve Sarkisian is a good head coach. I thought that this was, if they were going to make a coaching hire, I thought this was the best path for them.
Yeah. I'm cautiously optimistic.
I am cautiously optimistic for them with Steve Sarkisian.
I think I'd be optimistic if it was any other school other than Texas, but since it's Texas, I'm cautiously optimistic.
Yes, I would be extremely optimistic with any other school.
Yeah.
Except Texas.
Yeah.
I just think that there's too much. The alumni have too much power in that program, which they shouldn't have. And money plays too much of a role at Texas. Because as dumb as that sounds, I mean, they've got their own TV network that provides them a dick ton of money. And then they've got these alumni who provide a ton of money. And I just don't understand when is money going to be enough that you can just say, okay, I'm not going to listen to you because it's bad advice.
Yeah. It's honestly killing the program.
Exactly. That's my thing about Texas. I want to root for them, but I hate them. Like,
yeah,
I'm big on the horns down train. Every time someone does it, I am on board.
Like Abilene Christian in the tournament.
Yeah, I was right there with them, like, running around. There's something about that athletic program that it's almost like you shouldn't be making that much money and not winning at least 11 games every single season.
Yeah. They should be in the playoffs with the amount of money that they're spending. They should be in the playoff consideration every single year.
They should have made a playoff.
Yeah.
At least one. Michigan State and Washington made a playoff before you did, Texas.
Yep.
I don't think that Mac Brown necessarily was going to continue to win national championships at Texas. I just don't think that the way that it happened, that he was kind of forced out at Texas, was good.
Every episode, Cody.
Every episode. I'm always going to bring him up.
That's why I started cracking up. I was like, oh God, here we go with the Mac Brown.
I mean, I honestly think that 2009 national championship, that was the start of their downfall. Because I think before that national championship, I don't think Texas had a big as head as they do now. They have a massive head for how low they have achieved.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, if you look at the records, they're not as good as Ohio State. They're not as good as Alabama. They're not as good as Michigan. They're not as good as Penn State. Looking at the record historically, season to season, they're not. Texas, calm down a little bit.
Just take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. Let Sarkisian do his work here for a couple of years, and then reassess. Don't
automatically assume the ship is burning because he loses to Louisiana this year. He could lose to Louisiana this year.
I might bet on Louisiana.
I'm considering it.
Yeah. But so it's home to Louis. It's at Texas.
Yeah.
So what are we thinking? Texas like minus 3.5. That's probably going to be.
I'm going to give Texas 6.
6.
Just because of the
home field.
Home field, in addition to the recruiting classes that Texas has pulled in.
Yeah.
I mean, the players just should be significantly better.
We'll see if Louisiana's ranked at the start of the season too, because I feel like they always give extra.
I'm going to be interested to see that.
Yeah.
But they're ranked nationally at 16th. They're the second in the Big 12. Previously, they were ranked 8th nationally. Next year, they're currently ranked 9th. So I mean, they're right there. They have, I believe, the first 5-star of the Big 12. They have 1 5-star.
Only
9 4-stars.
Texas and Oklahoma.
Significant. And 11 3-stars. So they have a big class, 21 kids coming in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll see. They got to put together like 2 years of just consistently doing it before you're ever going to trust Texas doing it again.
I agree.
Looking at their schedule, they, like we talked about, they do play Louisiana to open up the season at home. Go on the road to Arkansas.
That's a sneaky, dangerous game.
Yeah. They play Oklahoma in the Cotton Bowl this year. They play
again.
Yeah.
They always play at the Cotton Bowl.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Nothing else sticks out. So let's move on to our final school in the Big 12 conference.
Yeah, Oklahoma. So they're ranked 11th nationally, first in the Big 12, obviously. Last year, they were ranked 12th nationally and second in the Big 12. And moving forward, they're ranked 8th nationally next year and first in the Big 12 currently. They have 16 commits, 1 5-star, 12 4-stars, and 3 3-stars. Their record in 2020 was 9-2. I think Oklahoma, for me, is probably my clear favorite for the Big 12 until somebody proves me wrong. And that's a safe bet.
It has to be consistently prove you wrrong too. It can't just be like 1 year Iowa State pops up and wins the Big 12, and then next year it's right back to Oklahoma. And that's
the thing. Iowa State didn't even win the Big 12 last year.
Yeah.
Oklahoma won it. And
Yeah.
that's the thing about the Big 12 is someone needs to actually win it, because I'm pretty sure I don't know when the last time they didn't win the Big 12 was.
It's been, maybe it was that 2008 Kansas year.
It might have been.
What if it was?
I'm going to look it up. I'm genuinely curious.
I am as well. This would be interesting because I don't know. That'd be freaking hilarious if it was that 2008 Kansas team. That was the last.
I think it's been a little bit more recent than that.
Was it Baylor? Was it Baylor under RG3?
The last time that Oklahoma didn't win it was 2014.
Oh.
And it was Baylor and TCU shared it.
That's right. I remember that year because they were the two that
left out of the playoff that year.
I remember that now.
Yeah. So that's the thing, is there's nobody that is clearly as good as Oklahoma. So until somebody wins it, Oklahoma is going to continue to win it. And I think Texas is the only one that's legitimately challenging them recruitment wise to be that team.
But Texas is a dumpster fire.
So. Exactly. So maybe it will be Kansas. Who fucking knows?
That's what I'm thinking right now. Who knows? It could be Oklahoma State. It could be Iowa State. It could be Baylor for all we know. I don't know.
Yeah.
West Virginia. Maybe West Virginia has a big year. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I do want to talk about Lincoln Riley for a second.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I think he has kind of a decision to make over this next year or two, whether he wants to stay at Oklahoma and kind of become the next Bob Stoops, the next Oklahoma head coach. That's what he's going to be known for the rest of the time, and have a very successful long career. Or does he jump ship, go to the NFL? Because I think if he keeps putting it off, NFL teams are kind of going to start losing interest and move on to the next hot college coach, next hot coordinator, and he'll kind of be left in the dust, which I guess, I don't know. I think he just needs to make a decision at some point, and maybe he's just going to stick at Oklahoma. But
yeah, I don't know. It's very possible that he stays at Oklahoma. It's a great job. Oklahoma is a great job.
The top five.
If you are winning games, you don't even have to be winning the Big 12 every single year, but if you're in contention, they're going to reward you for it.
Yeah.
And I think that you have natural recruiting abilities that the other schools in your conference don't have outside of Texas. I think it's a great job. So leaving there is something, it would be a bit of a risk.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that's a very good point about, them being left behind. I also think the NFL is a lot about relationships and who you have a relationship with. So maybe it's one of those things where an athletic director or someone that Lincoln Riley has worked with ends up in an NFL front office, and that's how he ends up in the NFL. Maybe, that's the kind of thing that he's looking for.
I mean, I think the teams have wanted him. I think he's just made the decision to stay at Oklahoma these last.
Well, no, I'm not saying the teams haven't wanted him. I'm saying that maybe that's what he is kind of waiting for. Maybe I don't want to. I don't know
somebody he knows in power at one of these.
Yeah. And maybe he just never wants to leave Oklahoma.
Who would blame him? Nobody would blame him.
I couldn't blame him either. I wouldn't leave. I personally would not leave Oklahoma. I would continue to coach there until I died.
Coach there for the next 50 years and be a legend for all time.
I mean, if he continues coaching there, he will win a national championship.
Yes, without doubt.
No doubt. So, and he could probably win 2 or 3 if he decided to coach there. And he's young. He's a young guy.
Yep.
So we're going to see that.
We'll see.
But other than that, Oklahoma, I don't have a whole lot. You're recruiting well. You're doing well. You need to actually play a game when you get to the college football playoff. Pretend that you want to be there.
Yeah.
But other than that, that's it. That's all I got.
I think that's pretty much it.
All right.
So you want to Go ahead and close out this day's show.
Thank you all for listening. I think our next week's conversation. Who do you want to do next week, Dan?
I've been feeling the Mac recently. You want to touch
do
on
the Mac? Okay, I'm into that.
I've been wanting to do the Mac.
Mac has divisions. Are we gonna try to split it up because it's kind of a bigger conference?
Yeah, and it is kind of close to us. It's very personal, so maybe we should split it up into 2 episodes.
So do you want to do the Mac West next week?
That's the one with Toledo, isn't it?
It is.
All right, yeah, we'll do that one next week.
Okay, Mac West next week. Mac East the following week.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye.